everybody, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Lottie and today we are going to be doing my December wrap up. First of all, I would like to wish everybody a happy new year. I hope that 2022 is great to you and that many good things come your way this year. Before I can start thinking about the new year, I need to wrap up my 2021 and what I read in 2021, starting with my December wrap up. Let's just get straight on into it with my statistics for December. In December, I read a total of 12 books, which is the most I have read this entire year at all. So I think I ended 2021 with a bang. I did also DNF one book. I don't include DNFs in my statistics, but I will just be shortly talking about the book and why I DNF'd it. But I did read a good chunk of this book that I DNF'd. In December, I read a total of 2,848 pages, which is, I think, my best reading month again in terms of page count. If we include all the pages from the book that I DNF'd, I ended up reading over 3,000 pages in December anyway, which is fantastic. So we are definitely on a roll and moving into the new year on the back of doing lots of reading. Those 2,800 pages are equal to reading 91 pages per day, which is great because in 2022 I would like to be reading 100 pages or more a day, so we are definitely on track to be doing that. In terms of star ratings, I had a really good reading month in December. I only had one 3-star book. I had 8 4-star books, and you will probably guess what those books are if you have been keeping up with what I've been reading on Goodreads. Finally, I read 3 5-star books in December, which is great because I didn't have any 5-star books in November, so I definitely ended the year on a high. In terms of genre, I read 9 fantasy books in December, which is pretty standard for me. I tend to read mostly fantasy. I read 1 science fiction, I read 1 dystopian, and I read 1 romance book in December as well. So I'm finally getting back into my contemporaries, my romances, which I have really missed towards the latter half of the year. I really want to be reading more of those in 2022 because I love them. And finally, I read only physical books this month, so instead I thought it would be interesting to mention that 3 of the books I read this month were from my pre-owned TBR, and 9 of them were books that I borrowed from the library. As you probably know, I started a new job working at my library in 2021, so I have been taking advantage of the fact that I am there every single day and I have been keeping an eye on books that have been interesting me, so I am definitely going to be reading more physical library books come 2022. But I tended to read quite a lot of digital library books anyway in 2021. I'm going to obviously be trying reading from my owned physical TBR and also my Kindle TBR. You'll probably be seeing a lot more library books in my wrap-ups. So before I get on into all of the books that I finished in December, I want to quickly mention the book that I DNF'd, and that is the Extinction Trials by A.G. Riddle. I saw this on our new books trolley at the library and I thought it looked really interesting. It really gave me Maze Runner vibes but for an adult audience, and I loved the Maze Runner when I was a teenager, so this was like, oh my gosh, this sounds like the Maze Runner but reinvented. And I got to about 250 pages through it and ended up DNFing it because it was just so boring. It really did not interest me. I thought I'd like to try and finish it just to see how it ends because it did supposedly have an amazing twist ending, but I just couldn't bring myself to care and finish the book, so I ended up DNFing it. I don't rate books that I've DNF'd, but this would definitely have gotten a low rating if I had ended up finishing it, but because I haven't read the whole book to rate all of the book on, I won't give it a rating. So this book was basically just about a group of strangers who wake up in this facility following a cataclysmic event that has brought about the end of the world. It was basically the Extinction Trials, where they are a group of test subjects to see if the human race could survive past an extinction event. We were just sort of following these characters as they went to different places and nothing else really happened. There was no high stakes, there was nothing really that interesting happening. I couldn't bring myself to care about the characters. They felt really two-dimensional. I was really disappointed by this book, but I had never heard of the author before. It was just a book that I saw that I thought I would give a go, and it wasn't for me, so yeah, I won't be reading from this author again, I think. Moving on to the books that I actually did finish, I will be talking about all of these books in the order that I read them, and we will be starting with Aurora's End by Amie, Kaufman and Kristoff. Kristoff. This came out in November and I just missed the chance to read it in November, so I ended up just reading it in the first book in December, and I'm really glad that I did because I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved this book. This has very quickly become my new all-time favourite series, very, very closely tied with the Nevernight trilogy by J. Kristoff. I absolutely bloody loved this. It was just completely flawless and an incredible finale to the Aurora Cycle trilogy. I only started reading this trilogy back in September, I think. I'm so glad that I have given it a chance because I loved it so much. I really don't think that I would have been able to wait for this book for like a whole year after Aurora Burning, so I'm glad that I was able to read them so closely together for the very first time. It created that feeling in me that I haven't felt for a really long time, where you just love a book so much and you are so obsessed with the characters, and when you really feel like you're in the story. It was just phenomenal. I just loved it so much. It was a brilliant ending. It was so emotional. I sat and read literally half of it in one sitting because I loved it so much. I literally could not put it down. Also, the cover is absolutely beautiful. I love Finn so much, who is the character on the cover here. He is probably my favourite character in the entire series. It was brutal, it was emotional, it made me laugh, it made me cry a lot. It ripped my heart out and put it back together. I loved it so much. The Aurora Cycle follows Squad 312, who are the dregs of the barrel at the Aurora Legion, which is kind of like Starfleet Academy in Star Trek. Their alpha, Tyler, on the night before the teams are drawn, he goes out to just fly, get his mind off things, he can't sleep, and he comes across a distress signal for a ship, and as per Aurora Legion's regulations, he goes and checks it out and comes across a girl who has been in cryosleep for 200 years. And after she stows away on Squad 312's ship on their very first mission, they all find themselves in the middle of a millennia-year-old battle between ancient alien races. It's just so epic. I love all of the characters and the way that they interact with each other. Amie Kaufman and J. Kristoff have really created such a fantastic world in this series. I love it way more than the Illuminae files, and I loved that. I've just never read something so wonderful before apart from Nevernight, and I keep emphasising Nevernight because I read that back in February and it gave me the exact same feelings that I had while I was reading this one. So those are 2 series that I have absolutely loved in 2021, and I'm so glad that I have read them. I really recommend it. Absolutely fantastic ending. This final book felt very Doctor Who. We follow 3 different timelines, which is really interesting, and I just loved it. The next book that I read in December was Wranglestone by Darren Charlton. This is another library book. I read this for the Burned Books Club, which is hosted by Spoops and Maddie, and I heard of this book because Spoopy Hole did a recommendations video and I found it really interesting, and because it was the Burned Books Club November-December book, I thought I would give it a go. This is about a post-apocalyptic world where zombies are now among us, and we're following a civilization living at Lake Wranglestone. We're particularly following one boy called Peter and also his companion Cooper. So this is an LGBT book. Peter and Cooper are sort of like in a romantic relationship with each other. When I read this, I was expecting a zombie story, and instead I got an almost poetic, very beautiful commentary on what it means to be human. Obviously, I don't want to spoil what happens in this book. It took a very different turn and it was a very different tone to what I was expecting. The subject matter of this book also had very subtle hints to the AIDS crisis, which I really appreciated. I think that's mainly what this book was supposed to be about, rather than like a zombie story. It was very reminiscent of the AIDS crisis and how people treated people with AIDS way back in like the 80s. Personally, didn't really care for the plot. I wasn't that excited by it. I think because I was expecting something very different, I just wasn't that into it. And also I had only just finished the Enemy series when I started reading this, so it was a lot of zombies all at once. But I really appreciated the commentary in this and the sentiment and the sort of deeper meaning behind what was happening in the story. Apparently this is the first book in a series, but I will not be continuing on with it, but I did appreciate this book for what it is. I think it is a debut novel as well, and it was very beautifully written. I gave it 3 stars. It was good, but it just wasn't for me. It was a very lovely book. So the next book that I read was Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. I got this as an add-on to my November Afterlight book box, and I thought, you know what, I need to read these books if I'm going to continue subscribing to that book box, so I thought I would give this a go. This came out in 2020 and it was one of my anticipated reads of that year because I heard the synopsis and thought I really want to read that, and I've only just gotten around to picking it up. This is a adult romance following April, who is a massive fangirl of this TV show. She writes loads of fanfiction about it, she does cosplay, and she is really excited about a upcoming convention. And we're also following Marcus, who is an actor in said TV show, who secretly writes fanfiction about his character because he doesn't enjoy where the show is going. The show is also based off a book series that is very reminiscent of A Song of Ice and Fire. I definitely think that the show / book series in this book is supposed to be A Song of Ice and Fire / Game of Thrones. There's a lot of subtle hints to it. The two head writers' names are really similar to the head writers of Game of Thrones. There's jokes that the book series is never going to be finished. There's also jokes about the final season completely taking a different turn to what the fans were expecting. They say that the TV show has overtaken the book, and also at the very end they say that the head writers were too busy trying to wrap up the final season of this show in this book because they wanted to go off and do a massive sci-fi project, which is also what happened with Game of Thrones. I really loved those little hints in this book. It was so funny to me. The main thing obviously about this book is the romance. So April posts a picture of her cosplay on Twitter, Marcus retweets it. She is fat. This book is fat rep, which I absolutely loved, and so she's getting a lot of hate comments about her weight in her picture, and Marcus is like, I think she's beautiful, I'm gonna ask her on a date publicly on Twitter. They go out on a date and the rest is history. I absolutely loved this. It gave me so many gooey mushy feelings inside. It was just such a lovely book, and I'm really excited to read more romance and read more from Olivia Dade as well. It was absolutely fantastic. 5 stars if you couldn't guess already. I just love this book so much. It was so cute. So the next 8 books I'm going to talk about all together. And it's the Spiderweb Chronicles and Beyond the Spiderwick Chronicles. After Disney Plus announced that they are turning the Spiderwick Chronicles into a series, I really wanted to give the books a go. I've never read them before, and I think I've only seen the movie once, so I very much was going into this blind. I read all 8 books for a reading vlog, which will be coming out on Wednesday, so do look forward to that. I will be giving my much more in-depth thoughts on the books in that, but I'm very quickly going to talk about them now. So first of all, we have the original Spiderwick Chronicles, which consists of the Field Guide, the Seeing Stone, Lucinda's Secret, the Ironwood Tree, and Mulgarath's Revenge. These books very much read like they are part of one longer book. It's kind of hard for me to explain, but they all feel like their own contained story. They're so short that they don't have anything of substance unless you read the whole series. They do obviously connect and overlap, but they definitely feel like they are more part of one longer book, even though they're like not connected very well. So in the Spiderwick Chronicles, we are following the Grace children, who consist of Jared and Simon, who are twins, and their older sister Mallory. They move to a old manor that they have inherited with their mom. Jared finds a old book, which is Arthur Spiderwick's Field Guide to Understanding the World Around You or something. It's basically a fairy spotting book, and as a result of finding said book, the kids are off on an adventure. It's high stakes for a middle grade series as well, which was really surprising to me. It was also really exciting and fun. What I love about these books as well is that they are completely fully illustrated. We've got full page and half page illustrations, and all of the books have at least 2 full colour illustrations / documents in them, which is really interesting. These were just a really fun reading experience, and I really enjoyed this quintet altogether. So I rated all 5 of these books 4 stars. I really enjoyed them. They were a lot of fun. And then I also read the follow-up series, which is Beyond the Spiderwick Chronicles, consisting of the Nixie's Song, A Giant Problem, and The Worm King. So these are a continuation of the original Spiderwick Chronicles, and instead we are following Nick and Laurie, who are step-siblings, and also Nick's older brother and his older brother's girlfriend, and also some surprise reoccurring characters from the original Spiderwick Chronicles. And basically in this series, the Spiderwick Chronicles are real books that Laurie is a very big fan of. She's obsessed with fairies, and Nick is like, oh, you're just really annoying. And it turns out obviously fairies are real, so they end up finding a Nixie who is like, you need to find my sisters, and it leads them on to finding giants, and then eventually something to do with The Worm King. I enjoyed this trilogy a lot more than the original quintet. I've just found that they were much better written and they all connected very well. They definitely stood on their own as books rather than feeling like they were lacking something. But obviously also they worked really well all together as a series. So I gave these 4 stars again. It's more of a high 4-star rather than a low 4-star, which was what I felt with the original quintet. These were really, really good. I really hope that Disney Plus also adapts these because I enjoyed them a lot more, but obviously we'll see. I really enjoyed Beyond the Spiderweb Chronicles. And so the last book of December that I read and the last book of 2021 that I read was A Dance with Dragons Part 2, After the Feast by George R.R. Martin. I have finally caught up with this series. I didn't think I was going to do it. Honestly, I didn't think I was going to do it. I had 2 series in 2021 that I really wanted to complete, and one of those was The Enemy and the other one was this, and I can't believe I've actually done it. Obviously, this is part of the Song of Ice and Fire series. In the first book, we are following Ned Stark, who is now Hand of the King. There are several hundred years of political family plots and backstabbings and war and dragons, and there's a queen across the sea who wants to claim back her rightful throne. And honestly, it's so hard to explain what this series is actually about because so much happens in it. We're following so many different perspectives. This is the second half of the last book. So in the UK, the 3rd and the 5th book are split into 2 books, and this is the second half of the 5th book. So to me, this is the 7th book in the series, but whatever. It was so good. I loved it so much. It was such a fantastic final to the last book. It was such a great second half, and also a really great installment in what is supposed to be a 7-book series. Obviously, The Winds of Winter, which is the 6th book, has been on hold now for 10 years and counting. This book came out in 2011, which is the same time that the show first started, which I cannot believe it was been 10 years since season 1 of Game of Thrones. And so I don't know if this series is ever going to be completed. Honestly, I'm really doubtful. The Winds of Winter might get released, but I don't think that the last book will ever be released. George R.R. Martin needs to get typing away if this series is ever going to be completed. So I originally started this series many years ago, and then when Catch Up Book Club was reading it, I tried to read along with them to get me to finish it, and I ended up falling off the bandwagon at the last 2 books. And that was because I didn't like the way the show ended, which is obviously not surprising. I don't think anybody enjoyed the ending of the show who was obviously a massive fan of it. I don't think the writers did a very good job, and it really put me off the books. It made me think that if that's how it's going to end, what's the point? Because I also don't think I'm ever going to see the end of the books. So I definitely was really pessimistic about this, but I enjoyed this so much. There was so much that happened in it that I couldn't remember had happened at this point in the show. So it was just a really exciting book. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant. There literally was not a dull moment in this. I feel like with long epic fantasies, you do have a lot of downtime where it's supposed to be character development, or it's like giving you red herrings and plot things, which is obviously really important for high fantasy, but this as like the conclusion to a book, a longer book, it was really exciting. The first half I didn't enjoy as much because it was a lot more build up, because obviously this is the second half of what is meant to be one book. It was great. There was just so much that happened, and I really hope that The Winds of Winter comes out soon because I need it now. I need it so much. I loved it so much. It was great. It was just great. So I don't think that this will surprise anyone, but my favourite book of the month was, of course, Aurora's End. I just loved it so much. It just gave me so many feelings. It was absolutely perfect. My most disappointing book of the month was Wranglestone. I did really enjoy it. I just was expecting a very different story to what I got, and I know now to maybe not expect epic action, etc. in books of this nature. And finally, my most surprising book of the month was A Dance with Dragons Part 2. It's not that I wasn't expecting to enjoy it, I'm just really surprised that I actually finished it and that I actually decided to pick it up in December, considering at the start of 2021 I said to myself, I must finish this series, and I left it literally until the last second. So those were all the books that I read in December. It was such a great reading month for me, and I can't believe how much that I read. I know that 8 of these books are all part of the same series and they're all 100 pages each, but it's still a very mean feat, and also these books are super heavy, so I'm going to put them down. So that is it from me for my December wrap up. If you read any of these books, let me know down in the comments below. And if you'd like to leave a comment but you don't have anything to say, leave me the zombie emoji for Wranglestone. But yep, that is it from me today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to be trying to publish a video every single week in 2022, so fingers crossed. In January, there'll also be a couple of weeks where you get 2 videos from me just because of the way that I have planned everything out, but yeah, I'm sure you won't mind. That is it from me again. Thank you so much for watching again. Okay, bye.